Every morning with just the news. All the news and none of the noise.
Good morning from the nation's capital. Welcome to Just the News AM. I'm your host, Nicholas Balassi, filling in for Carrie Sheffield. We have a great lineup of guests covering a wide range of topics in the news. First up, we're going to Oklahoma Republican Congressman Markwayne Mullin. Congressman, good morning and thanks for joining us here.
Morning, sir. Thanks for having me on.
So how's everything going on Capitol Hill with all of the enhanced security?
It's interesting. If you've ever been overseas and been to an embassy or a base over there, like say walking into the embassy in Kabul, it's more like going there than it is the United States Capitol. It's actually a shame. We have 7-foot fences. I see that you're showing the fences around, but on top of that, what you don't see now is they've added razor wire on top of it, and they had the perimeter. They had 3 perimeters set up. They have MRAP vehicles parked at them. They got National Guards at the checkpoints. There's only 2 ways in, one on the Senate and one on the House. You can't drive down Independence. You can't drive down Pennsylvania, so the public can't even drive past the Capitol now. It's actually pretty sad to see. It breaks my heart.
Do you see the enhanced security going away anytime soon, or the complex being open to the public?
No, the notice we got last week was that the fences were indefinite. So what indefinite means, what's the time frame on that, is it's yet to be determined. But it'd be very difficult for a guest to even come to my office at this point. Used to, our halls were full of constituents, of business people, people of interest coming to our hearings, coming into our offices, getting to view the greatest capital in the world, our nation's capital. And right now there's no visitors. It's just almost like a ghost town up here. I remember I came up here in 2010. Was my first time to ever be in Washington, D.C., and I was with the honor flight, and I was with my grandfather, and he fought in World War II. And we actually drove past the Capitol, and how exciting it was just to drive past it, just for him and I to see it together, how exciting that was. And there's so many people that aren't going to get to experience that, much less be able to go inside.
Yeah, well, I wanted to shift gears over to energy because you've been tweeting about the Keystone Pipeline project and President Biden's decision to cancel it with an executive order unilaterally. And you hear environmental activists actually calling on him to cancel the Dakota Access Pipeline as well. So what's your reaction to that? And is there something that you've done in response to it or that you're planning to do after this action was taken?
Well, we put out H.R. 575, which is a Cross-Border Infrastructure Act, which would bring security and assurity to people wanting to invest in the infrastructure with Canada or with Mexico. The issue that you have right now is what Biden did was unprecedented. He canceled a presidential permit that the president before him approved, and the president before that, Obama, had issued the study and moved forward with the permitting process. So you had basically two presidencies that had looked at the Keystone Pipeline. They took a deep dive in it. One started it, one approved it, and then when the third one came in, he canceled it for no reason. There was no review of the permitting process. There was no oversight into it. It was purely political. In my opinion, a lawsuit can be filed in this case just for the Commerce Clause. When there's billions of dollars of private money and public money that has been invested in Canada and inside the United States, and for a permit to do it for political purposes, we don't do that inside the United States. That's what happens in Venezuela. That's what happens in China. That's what happens in Russia. That's what happens in third world countries, not inside the United States. The reason why people do business inside the United States is because of the assurity. When they invest their money, and if they manage it right, they are guaranteed a return when there's a need for it. In this case, it was politically motivated, and there's a lot of people that's lost their investment here for no reason whatsoever, other than just pure bowing down to the enviro community.
Well, the Biden administration is saying the decision was related to climate change. What do you think about that? I mean, the environmental impact versus the economic benefits, how do you weigh that when you look at the situation?
So let's talk about the pipeline they were going to put in. The pipeline they were going to put in was going to be the most environmental friendly pipeline they had. They were going to be zero emissions by 2030. They were going wind energy and solar energy to power the pump stations to push it. And when you start looking at the crude itself, the crude itself is still going to be transported into the United States. It's still got to get down to Houston because that's where the refineries are. So now you're going to be transporting by truck and train. So explain to me how that's more environmentally friendly. When you saw the safety measures that this company was investing in their pipeline, it was environmentally friendly. That deal is they're anti-fossil fuel, and their idea is that the enviros is they want to eliminate as much fossil fuels as possible, drive up the cost, which they did this underneath the Obama administration. That's why we saw $4 a gallon gas in Oklahoma, which is unheard of. In other parts, they were having $6, $7 a gallon gas. They want to drive it up so high that people will abandon them and force us to go to wind and solar. But there isn't enough wind and solar out there to replace fossil fuels, and they know that. And so it's extremely hypocritical for what they're trying to do for nothing more than just a political plan. I mean, here you have John Kerry that is leading the charge, and he's jetting all over the United States in his private jet. I don't see him pedaling a bike. I don't see him driving Tesla across the United States. No, he's flying in his private jet. So he's telling us not to do something, but he's going to do it himself. If that's not a double standard, what is?
Do you think the U.S. can maintain its standing as a net exporter of energy right now under the Biden administration? Not
underneath these terms. No way we can. Because we can't compete with other countries. The other countries have oil and gas reserves too. We were able to compete with OPEC because of the regulations that, truthfully, that the Trump administration got rid of because it was hurting the industry. It didn't damage our environmental footprint. In fact, industry themselves have done a great job cutting down their waste and protecting our environment. Government, that's not a role that we have to play in. That's a role that we can oversee, but that's not a role we have to play in. But when we start running up the cost of energy, it puts us at a disadvantage, and that's what we have. We're at a disadvantage now of other countries, and we're allowing Saudi Arabia once again and OPEC to take control of the world oil market, and that's for a national security perspective, that puts us in a bad place.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope to get you back again soon. There's a lot of issues to discuss. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Well, next up, we have some other great guests. We have Bruce Collins from C-SPAN coming up discussing cameras